Hello and welcome back to 365 Days with mxmtoon, but with a twist. I'm Maya, a singer, songwriter, video maker, and Oakland native. I'm also a huge fan of history. I love untold stories, gross facts, hidden secrets, anything weird, dark, and funky from the past. This month we have some very special episodes. Each week one of my friends will be taking over the podcast to share their favorite deep cuts with you. Rounding out this fun month of guest hosts is the lovely and very, very funny Noah Kahan. You might know him from songs like Hurt Somebody and False Confidence. We also did a collab back in October of 2020 called Pride. Noah, take it away.
It's 365 with Noah Kahan. New facts every day, so don't leave too soon. I'm gonna teach you stuff, no it won't be tough. Gonna go a year till you've had enough. It's 365 with Noah Kahan.
On this day, in 1945, Adolf Hitler admitted defeat in World War II. Let's look back at the history of the war and how it still impacts us today. After World War I ended, Germany was in disarray. The Eastern European nation had to agree to the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, which dictated that Germany was at fault for World War I, and that they had to pay reparations and limit the size of their military. A decade later, the Great Depression rocked the world, which increased global tensions. This paved the way for Adolf Hitler to rise to power as the leader of the German Nazi Party. So Hitler took power in 1933 as a dictator in Germany. He rallied people to support him through his clever political rhetoric and propaganda. In a time of great turbulence, people thought that he had the answers. But despicably, his quote-unquote answers were to exterminate the people who he thought stood in the way of German imperialism. This included people who were Jewish, Roman, Polish, Soviet, disabled, LGBTQ, and more. Hitler's reign was driven by white supremacy, and the inhumane acts he ordered remain incomprehensible, even generations later. During World War II, over 6 million Jews were killed in what's now called the Holocaust. In Hebrew, it's called Shoah, which translates to destruction or catastrophe. 11 million people from other targeted groups were killed as well. It's easy to look back at events like this and think, oh, this is something of the past, and this could never happen again in our contemporary world, but it's not true, as much as I wish it was. The mass genocide that occurred during World War II was one of the worst in all of human history, but no matter how powerful Hitler was as a fascist dictator, he didn't do this alone. When we learn about the Holocaust now, we often ask why people didn't intervene. After the war, senior Nazi soldiers were accused of crimes against humanity and questioned at the Nuremberg trials. At these trials, an international military committee with representatives from Allied forces countries, the US, the Soviet Union, the UK, China, others, brought these Nazi leaders to justice. Most Nazis said that they were just doing their jobs and following orders. This claim was so common that it's now known as the Nuremberg defense. Still, only 3 people were found not guilty. Over 6 years, Allied forces from the US, UK, Soviet Union, France, and other countries continued to fight Nazi Germany and the Axis powers. By 1945, the German army's power was dwindling. And on April 22nd, Russian troops advanced on Eberswalde, but a general told Hitler that they had no troops to deploy in defense. Oops. Meanwhile, in another city near Berlin, a Soviet army liberated a prisoner of war camp, and that was when Hitler admitted defeat. Even though this mass genocide is behind us, the hateful sentiments that propelled Hitler to power are still present in our culture. In the United States, neo-Nazism and white nationalism have been on the rise. In 2017, 1 year after Trump's election, the Southern Poverty Law Center reported a 22% increase in the total number of hate groups. Just this year, we've watched as Trump supporters breached the Capitol building in an attempted coup. Some of the people were wearing t-shirts with anti-Semitic neo-Nazi images. Then, in March, 8 people were killed at a string of shootings at spas in Atlanta, Georgia. This was a racist, sexist hate crime against Asian American women, and it marks an anti-Asian sentiment that has been growing in the U.S. for far too long. The tragedies of World War II weren't just confined to Europe. In the U.S., President Roosevelt signed an executive order to incarcerate over 110,000 Japanese Americans in concentration camps. This was a response to the attack on Pearl Harbor and an unnecessary cruelty forced upon innocent people. And when we talk about the harm of World War II and the hateful acts it inspired, it would be an oversight not to mention the horrors the U.S. committed on its own soil. In the face of such violence, it's normal to feel a sense of hopelessness. We can't let that be our only reaction. We can't simply be bystanders to acts of hate. Even when our friends or family say something we know is wrong, we need to call them out. And when enough of us work together to stand up for the respectful treatment of all people, we can make a change. Okay, folks, for today's music fact, we do have a special guest, and it is MisterWives, here to talk about an April 22nd in their life.
On this day, a year ago, we released one of my favorites, Rock Bottom, which I got to create with my good friend Cal and Louie. And I remember the session being set up just for the fun of it because the album was already done. So I got to just write with a really low pressure environment. And I showed up to the studio and was just talking about where I was at mentally and emotionally. And I remember Cal playing a really somber guitar part, which as pretty as it was, I was like, no, I think we need to go in a more uplifting direction that's super dancey. Because to me, it was such a victory of how far I had come from this super dark, depressing, toxic place. And even though I was still working my way through it and wasn't out of it completely, and honestly still am not, I felt like it was something to be celebrated and something to not be ashamed about. And so the session flew by. It was just one of, honestly, the most fun sessions I've ever had, and we didn't want it to end. And even that night, Mike Easterlin, the head of the label, called me to be like, this is the song you're going to close your set out with, even though we never had a set that year. Spoiler alert. And while on the topic of lockdown and quarantine, we put this song out right at the top of that. And so we needed artwork, and of course, we couldn't shoot the way we once used to. So I did the artwork with my boyfriend in our tiny apartment with no gear, no proper equipment. And that was honestly the start of the new beginning of working with the album and the artwork super intimately because we no longer had the resources we once did. So I'm super proud of that song. I'm proud of all the artwork and the video that came with it. And most importantly, I just hope it reminds anyone who's struggled, which is the most human thing in the world and has been in rock bottom, to be okay, even proud with the messy parts of our life and all the lessons and growth that comes with it.
Yo, everybody, today is such an important day. It's such a good day because today is the 1-year anniversary of me getting my dog Maggie, who is the sweetest girl in the entire world. And I guess she's my dad's dog, but she's like a family dog. And, we got her kind of right after the pandemic started, and she just represents like a very specific time in our lives. And she is just the cutest gal out there. She is a Caucasian Ovcharka, and that's a Russian bear hunting dog traditionally, but she kind of just watches Law and Order with my dad at night and occasionally eats her own poop. But she's wonderful, and we love her. And I'll never forget picking her up and hanging out with her in the car. And she was so little, and now she's fucking massive. So we love Maggie, and this is the anniversary of us getting her. So let's say a happy birthday to Maggie. Thanks for going back in time with me, y'all. Thank you so much. And please remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Come back tomorrow for some more stories from the past.
It's 365 with Noah Kahan. New facts every day, so don't leave too soon. I'm gonna teach you stuff, no it won't be tough. Gonna go a year till you've had enough. It's